This is a production of Cornell University.
Thanks everyone for joining us. This is episode 2 of season 4, the Cornell Turf Show. Today we're going to chat some sports turf with Ben Polimer. He's in Weston, Mass. You guys might remember Ben from previous episodes last year. We're going to get Ben's thoughts on sort of starting up the spring, how the athletes are getting out on those fields, using those fields. And we're going to get to some talk about BMPs and sports turf too. We talk about BMPs a lot in golf course turf, and excited to talk about a new document Ben helped put together for the New England folks on sports turf BMPs. But Frank, let's start it off with you as always. Bring my co-host Frank Rossi in here today. Frank, let's get going and get your thoughts on how the season might progress here going forward.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. Let me get the slides up here. Great to be back in our 10th year, and we're in a minute you're going to get to hear Carl rant, which is I really have enjoyed these rants. He had a great one yesterday on the golf ball, and I threw him a fish hook in to see if he'd go for the bifurcation argument, but he didn't fall for it. He's much smarter than I am. So we have a great guest today. It's going to be a great 30 minutes and go by really fast, but I like to start out with knucklehead stuff, right, Ben? You know, how do you plow snow and on synthetic fields with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, right? This goes to the whole idea of the professionalism and the way sports turf managers are perceived in their facility operations. And, you know, that's just why we have you, Ben, because it's really important to model, not just to students and young people that want to do this, but to administrators. And we're going to get to administrators here in a minute. But Carl, before we get started, I know you've got something really interesting that came across your desk because you're involved, just being a concerned citizen. How about that? A concerned citizen caring about the grounds in the city of Ithaca. Tell us about this story.
Yeah, Frank. So I visit Cass Park down in Ithaca, right on the inlet, very often. Go there with my daughter, or go there with my dog, walking around. This is basically a facility. It's got like 12 to 13 athletic fields. There's baseball fields, soccer fields, a lot of sort of intramural youth sports that go on there, and a lot of walking trails as well. So they came out with a draft report of their capital plan. They want to renovate this area in the near future. So they came out with a draft plan and requested some comments from the public. And so what I was interested in is the turf section. So as we move forward here, there's almost a 400-page document. And a lot of it is spent talking about the natural grass fields and what they want to do. They want to amend the soils, maybe raise them up because it's right on the water edge. There's a lot of sort of ponding and compaction that happens. They want to add drainage maybe. So that's all really good. There's a lot of meat and potatoes in there about renovating these fields and specs there. But what I was interested in was, are they going to address the maintenance on the back end of those fields? So as I'm reading through, I see a lot about sand specs and, we're going to have to raise it this amount, topography. It took me until page 314 out of 374 to get to the part where they talked about maintenance considerations for the grass athletic field. So this is buried way down in the appendix. I guess they get a point for addressing general maintenance. But if we read some of these, Frank, the first bullet point they say is cut the grass shorter during wet periods to allow more sunlight. Oh, go one back there. Allow more sunlight to reach the soil and assist in drying out faster. Frank, I've never heard that. Cut the grass really short, scalp it down when the soil's saturated. That's not necessarily a best practice to me. Bullet point 3 was another interesting one. Use calcined clay and diatomaceous earth in turfgrass areas. Maybe some of those materials used in infield skins. But those materials used in turfgrass areas may, when I'm looking at that, maybe that actually hurts the physical properties, not necessarily a good recommendation there. So while they mentioned maintenance, they talk about it really generally, and they actually give some sort of questionable maintenance practices in there. What I was really interested in was, are they going to address the labor and equipment requirements, the cultural practices that are going to need to be required of these fields? They're going to be, higher end fields than what's currently there, sort of a minimum level. Are they projecting in the future we're going to need more labor and more equipment? And they didn't address that. And that's pretty common, I think, in a lot of these documents. Frank, you're nodding your head, Ben is too. These people put a lot of, these engineering firms who develop these specs, put a lot into the construction, and they don't think about the maintenance. What I would say is there's an APA for that, right? There's an app for that for everything, Frank. APA, the acronym is for American Physical Plant Association. Dan Shai, the director of Cornell Grounds, has turned me on to these documents. They talk about, this is really focused on educational facilities, buildings, and how we keep those buildings. They have a lot of tables, and I love tables, Frank. I'm a table guy. A lot of tables and specs on how often they have to maintain these areas. And they have a grounds version, and they start with expectations, which is so great. They call it levels of attention. They have a 1 through 5 level. Their level 1 is what they call state-of-the-art maintenance. And that goes all the way down to level 5, which is minimum maintenance. And in their grounds document, they talk a lot about the various types of grounds, and they start with levels of attention and then the needs based on those level of attention. So, they have examples of baseball fields, general turf areas, landscape beds. Here's a little snippet of the soccer and football section. So they have a bunch of the tasks: mowing, seeding, irrigation, fertilizer applications. And based on those level of attentions, how much time you're going to spend in a given week across the season doing those things. And they total that up, and they have some really cool numbers that would be great baseline numbers for people who are generating these sorts of engineering documents to consider on the back end how much maintenance is required. So this brought me back to some stuff Chris Titko and I did in 2017 when Chris was back with us as a graduate student. The next slide, Frank, shows some of the estimations we came up with Cornell athletic fields. So we looked at a bunch of the different athletic facilities at Cornell and came up by month with all the activities and the frequency you need to conduct those with. We have scouting, fertilizer, irrigation rolling in here, and we came up with some estimates of hourly requirements to maintain those fields. So really my rant today, Frank, is when we build these things, you said it best the other day when we were talking, we build these things and then we burden ourselves with the maintenance afterwards. And it would be really great if we plan that maintenance when we're building them.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just forethought. And Ben, I talked about this work that Carl and Chris did at NERF, the Turf Foundation, a year ago. I talked about managing Division I sports fields, and it came from this. It was really good to see, Carl, the validation from the American Physical Plant Association, and one of the things is we have to explain this to people who don't know anything about it. And I've got a point about this, but let me see. Yeah. So first I want to get to the weather, and then I'm going to get to the setup for Ben. So if you guys will indulge me for a minute, we'll go through a quick what's been going on in March and what are we going to expect moving forward. Well, no surprise to most people, it's been, when you look at the whole of, the first 15 days of March, happy St. Patty's Day, right? Is it St. Patty's Day today, Ben? Where's your green? Are you Irish, Ben?
No, hey, listen, you had three Italians yesterday. You got 2 Italians and a Jew, so it's not working out well for us for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, we're doing good. All right. So just warm conditions so far in March. And generally what we heard from Art yesterday, our climatologist, is that the fall and the winter saved us from the drought we were in last fall. It was really dry going into the winter. And the precipitation we've received, especially where you are, Ben, you were pushing 200% of normal. We're in a little bit more of a dry spot out here, Carl, hovering just a little bit below normal. And the New York metro area is always fascinating to me, right? It's really good right around the city and Brooklyn and Queens. And then you get to where Bethpage is and it's bone dry right in the middle there. And it's very funny how precipitation can be continuously spotty like this. Now, the thing that's really interesting is really glad for the snow, for the ski places. Gosh, those New England ski places finally had a decent year. I think for the most part, they're certainly above normal in March. But as you can see, the rest of the Northeast significantly at or below normal for snowfall. And of course, that's essentially says that not a lot of people had to worry about snow mold this year. And if you're worrying about snow mold, you're probably worrying about it from microdochium patch, more the pink snow mold than the gray snow mold that requires, long periods of snow cover. Well, and Art said this too yesterday. He goes, we're going to get a little cold weather, but then it's going to just go. And it really looks like April is going to get warmed, which really is pertinent for our discussion today. And it's a 50-50 chance about what it's going to be rainfall wise. This is the hardest thing to predict. It does look like the Great Lakes in general are going to be wet, but it's not clear whether it's going to make it to the East Coast. One of the other things we talked about yesterday with our climatologist is, yeah, the air can get warm, but that soil's not going anywhere anytime soon. And this really drives breaking grass out of dormancy. And it's really important to understand. We're pretty good sometimes at getting it green, but that doesn't mean it's growing and it can put up with the traffic and the wear. People see green grass, it's like, oh, let's get out there. Green is different than growing when it comes to the spring. Now, Ben, here's the setup for today. I don't know how many text messages you got during the Super Bowl. I got 32. People who I haven't talked to in literally 15 years are like, Frank, what WTF with this field? And of course, you know, I boast, so they think I'm involved in everything, right? Ben, probably your family thinks you're involved in everything, right? So I got 32 messages. This is very interesting from my perspective. One is it really draws a light to what we do. Even a negative light, like any press is good press, right? To a certain extent. Polimer throwing them under the bus was probably not the best move for the NFL. But I think in general, you're starting to see more professional responses and more attention being paid. Carl and I got an email the other day because this goes to trying to explain what happened at the Super Bowl to people who don't know anything. Carl and I got an email the other day from somebody involved in our New York State school facilities thing. And he sent us an email, wants us to get involved in a publication, Ben, much like we're going to talk about in a minute, your BMPs. This is what he said in the middle of the paragraph we needed to do. Just take a minute. Think of it as trying to explain to someone who just started as a director of facilities how to manage grass at a district, and their prior experience was a maintenance supervisor for a plumbing contractor. So this is what we're tasked with just about every day, especially in the sports turf business. Maybe golf, it's a little bit different, but I don't know. Now, to address this over the years, and particularly because we've had pesticide bans in place here in New York State for a really long time, we have a really comprehensive website that people can go to and get information. In fact, Ben, your publication links to it on many occasions, which we really appreciate. It's just so great. And one of the things we address in here is working with coaches and athletic directors. Now, big kudos to the New England Sports Turf Managers Association and my old grad student pal, Vicky Wallace. Is that Chris? And I don't know the fella to the right, Ben. Who's that fella to the right?
That's our president-elect, Art Goodheim.
Okay. Art, and
Yep.
Chris, I know. He's a familiar face.
Correct.
And
Yep,
that's Vicky
absolutely.
Wallace, the turf extension specialist in Connecticut. And there's Ben, and probably a picture he enjoys seeing with the things that matter most. But I know you probably had to take a lot of time away from them to put together this best management practices. Now, the Mid-Atlantic had done one, right? This is your version. And it's one of the, I'm just going to highlight a little bit, do some high level, and then we'll chat about it. Really good. Whenever you do BMPs, you have to start with the regulatory framework. You have to understand what, especially in municipal environments where, you guys are involved in working for the municipality that enforces these things. You guys are held to a higher standard. So paying attention to this book has a very comprehensive list. In fact, I thought the soil health one was the soil health one was particularly interesting. This happens to be the legislation stuff. Now, we'll talk about how to get the book, but these other things that you've done, which I think are consistent, much like our website, what's unique to New England? Well, one of the things unique to New England is you got these patchwork pesticide bans. You've got these restrictions in certain places. You've got heightened awareness and concern about these sorts of things. So this case study that you did with Rick Peruzzi up there in Maine, where these things are happening, is incredibly well done. What we learned at the bottom of these case studies, what did they say? Every 3 to 4 years, you need a pre. But you can go, this is the kind of language we need to talk, not I got to have pre's every year. How long can I live without them? This is absolutely brilliant. Big shout out to Rick. Now, of course, this was one particular one was near and dear to my heart because the phrase mowing thing, citing the work that we did with Chris a number of years ago, taking out the weed seeds, right? And this has been published by Jim Brosnan and the folks at Tennessee. And then this one was really interesting, the robotic paint job thing, especially with how long this thing will run. You can't swap the battery. When it's exhausted, it starts clogging and wobbling, painting erratic lines. So, this is the kind of stuff that we're really grateful to guys like Brendan who do it and then tell us about it, right? They take the time not just to do it, but to tell us about it. All right, Ben, I want to, before we get to these questions, let's go back to the document here. Talk to us about this document. Give me a little bit more than an elevator speech. What's the genesis of it and what are your plans for it?
Yeah, so Vicky headed up the SFMA document a few years ago. It was right around when COVID started. And, she was SFMA at the time wanted a BMP document. We put together sports turf managers, practitioners, educators, extension, and everything, and built a document on the national side. And that was good. And then always the goal was to have some regional BMPs, and really Maryland, as you said, kind of led that charge. And the idea being is the SFMA document was kind of that template where we could take that template and bring it to a region and then put our own spin on it, if you will, put those regional information that's important to us, like you said, like the pesticide regulations. One of those things, we don't need to talk about Bermuda grass here, really, overall, though maybe we need to, and we did leave some of it in a little bit. And then really what we did is, and then, like I said, for our NESTMA document, we took, again, practitioners, educators, sports turf managers from New England, brought us all together, brought the national document in and said, how can we make it our own? And certainly kudos to Vicky and Alyssa in her office. They worked tirelessly on this project, which again was funded by the New England Regional Turfgrass Foundation, and that's key. We NESTMA could not do this without them. No way. And we spent a lot of time looking at the document and making as many things New England based as we could. And then, as you said, from the case study perspective, we kind of looked at other BMPs, golf, sports turf, other places around. And Maine did something really interesting where they added these case studies in, which we really liked. And as you kind of hit on, it's really good, practical information. And they're one page, right? It's one page. The way these are set up, they're one page, front and back. And always the idea was this is something that can be left for advocacy purposes, for legislators, for someone like my boss, who again, who's a facilities director, who doesn't know things about sports turf or grounds, but can understand this from a layman's perspective of what we're doing. So the case studies, we didn't include them in the document because we think they're always going to change, right? We think we're going to have these be new in every couple of years. I think is that what we're thinking about as technologies like the robotic painter come into fashion. Just different things we're learning about. So it's a really fantastic document. I can't say enough kudos to Vicky and Alyssa and all the other participants who really helped with this. It's a great document.
Yeah, I haven't been involved in the golf one here in New York State. I know the lift that it is, and it usually falls to just a few people at the very end to get it over the line. And in my case with golf, it was Stacy Kingsbury here in New York State and Ken Benoit and the guys down there. But you have to have a key core group of people. This is good for other people, maybe from other states or other areas that are listening to this. This is the kind of thing you can rally an industry around, right, Ben? I mean, this brought a lot of people together. And that in and of itself is really good. Now, I will say, too, you guys have done a really good job in bringing sports turf managers together in New England in a way we have not effectively done here in New York State. So that is also something. We have not found a way to rally our sports turf managers as effectively as you guys have done, and then have that relationship with the Regional Turf Foundation. So listen, how are you going to distribute this thing? You have a sort of unique way you're thinking about it. I think if I was in New York right now, I'd join the New England Sports Turf Managers thing just to get this thing. Period.
And that's what we're looking at. Yeah, good. Yeah. So it's our document. It's a NESTMA document. It's proprietary. And we want to offer it to our membership as a member benefit. And we think that's really important. So, you know, it's available on our website. It's a locked document. Like I said, you have to be a member to have the document, have the case studies. We did print a number of them. But as you said, there's a lot of links. So the PDF document is really the living document where we link to a lot of different other pages, other fact sheets and things. So I think it's much better than the book itself. But everyone likes holding on to a book still for certain things. So we encourage people, if they want the document, become a NESTMA member, and it's that simple. And then you have the opportunity to have that document.
It's perfect. Congratulations. Well done. Now,
Thank you.
okay. This is just great. I'm so glad we can highlight it like this. And you can go to the you can Google New England Sports Turf Managers, and it'll take you right there. Can you sign up online?
Absolutely.
Perfect. There you go. Okay. So Ben, how about your work now? We had, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if Carl Swanger Golf Club, but I know it was in the 60s and 70s for a few days in February. And we had 2 weeks of really warm weather, and I'm sure you did too. And you know, this thing called cabin fever is a known issue. It is something we've diagnosed back in the old days, you know, before we had social media. People were still nuts before social media came around, lest anybody forget. It's just we didn't know about how nutty everybody was. But people had problems with cabin fever. They got locked up. So the minute you can get out, Ben, they want to use it. Now, you came to mind immediately as Carl and I were talking about this, because there's not a lot of science around this stuff. Here's what I can tell you. The grass isn't growing. It's going to wear out. If the soil's fine textured and wet, it's going to turn to mud. There's not a lot of research you have to do on these particular facts. What you have to do, this is where the science ends and the management picks up. Your use of sneakers on these kids, right, in the early season is that innovation. So first off, what do we do with early spring play, what I call fall spring? You know, they get that play and now you got this crap. They want to get back on it. Is there anything you can do in the fall? Let's look back for a second. That sets you up for what you want in the spring.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. As much work as we can do in the fall to get these fields prepped for spring is what we end up doing. And like you said, we had a bunch of great weather in February. We were doing ball field work in February. We were getting new infield mix in. We were working foul line areas. You know, we were getting pitcher's mound and plate areas ready to go while the weather was good. You know, strike while the iron's hot. We cooled down very quickly here in the fall, so there's a few things we wanted to do late in the fall that we just weren't able to do.
Like what?
Just more ball field prep than anything else. That seems
more
to
the
be
skin.
the biggest
More
thing.
the skin.
More the skin. Yeah. I mean, we obviously want to have 100% turf cover going into the winter season. So you know, we're constantly overseeding goal mouth areas. We've been doing that no matter spring, summer, or fall. We're doing that anyways. We actually did try a little bit of covers this winter on some goal mouth areas. I did pull the covers back in late February. I did have a picture of that on Twitter. Everything's still down. I'm actually going to go out today and take a peek under and see what it looks like now that we lost all the snow here. But yeah, having 100% turf cover is certainly important. I will say this: we are lucky here in Weston. We have enough fields, so we do a field rotation schedule. So we end up taking a field offline. Yeah, we take a field offline every year, every season, and we rotate around. And I get it. People cannot, if you're landlocked, I get it. You can't do that. But we're lucky we're able to do that. So we have one of our main lacrosse fields offline this springtime, and still debating on what we're going to do for some extra maintenance while we have that time to recover.
And I think the thing is, you know, you're right. Not everybody has that luxury, but that's a piece of information that is good to pass on to people as an aspiration. It's like, you want better fields, you need a few more, period. Especially if you want to use them at times when you're not assured to get good recovery, right? So do you then, you know, obviously you tell them they got to wear sneakers, right? That's the move
Yeah,
early
well,
on,
yeah,
sneakers?
so we have youth start up pretty much next week or so, maybe depending on the way that the field's dry. First week in April, and we'll reach out to basically it's our youth soccer, youth lacrosse for the first couple weeks or so before they have games, and say, we'd love you to use sneakers. Do they all listen? No, of course not. They don't all listen. But if I can get 50% of them to do it, that would be great. But when I got guys that work on it today, we have 2 synthetic fields, right? And that's that shoulder season of the muck and the nastiness that we have. We have high school sports starting Monday. They're going to be on synthetic for a week, and I've already had conversations with our athletic director. I said, listen, first week, all synthetic. He said, yep, no problem. You let us know what you need us to do.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
And we'll get there. They're going to want to jump on a ball field. They want to throw the baseball around the diamond. No questions asked, right? And we'll get there. We'll get there. Long range forecast looks pretty good in the next like 7 to 10 days. So I think we'll have some skin fields, potentially ready to go.
Yeah, and we're going to do, that's great. And I got to tell you, that's great. I'm glad that you brought attention to the infield mix, because every year we have my favorite infield guy, Evan Machete from Penn State. The work he's done is pioneering, and I don't think anybody's even paying attention to it, except the MLB guys who have been perplexed by this stuff for a really long time, and there's no standards and specs for it. The clay is really difficult. Carl, I want to give you a chance to ask Ben maybe some operational questions or anything else before we wrap up today.
Yeah, you mentioned there a little bit, Ben, but the communication with an athletic director or a coach, that's integral, right? In outlining the expectations for the spring and saying, hey, we've got this long range forecast, so we might be able to get you out, but I'll keep you updated. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of engaging with those people and some of the best practices to approach them when you're saying something like, hey, we got to hold you off the ball fields for a little bit? What's the best way to go about that communication?
Yeah, I mean, it starts at the beginning, long before this, of having a good relationship with administration, athletic directors, even our youth coordinators, our youth sports presidents, having that. I had a coffee at the coffee shop with the youth baseball president last week, and it's just having those relationships that make going forward having tougher questions and tougher answer sessions together. So having those good relationships, I have a great relationship with our athletic director here. He's a very easygoing guy, which is great. And I get it. Some people just they want to go. Hey, college baseball's been going for a month already, right? And you got to deal with what you got to deal with. And we're lucky here that it's just we have those good relationships, and we don't start super early. And again, like you said, having those conversations about weather, having those conversations about what do we really need, and I have those with some of our youth sports. What do we really need for fields lined?
Exactly
do we really need them all lined? Do we need some of them lined? Do we need goals other places? Can we use cones, right? So let's spread the wear, let's spread the damage, and we're going to work with you as much as we can.
Yeah, and being nimble, right, Carl? Being nimble is really important because stuff's always happening with all those fields.
Yeah, Frank, and you've had some experience dealing with some of the Cornell coaches here as well, but asking the right questions and asking them to give certain types of input rather than others, right? You've talked a lot about tell me what you want to see in the ball as opposed to tell me if I should mow it higher or lower or rolling, right? It's almost about
two kinds of coaches. There's 2 kinds of coaches: those who can tell you what they want, and those who feel like they need to tell you what to do. Just tell me what you want. I can figure out how to do it. I'm a professional at this, right? We're professionals at this. And I think that's really fundamentally what I want to end with, Ben, is that relationship that with someone also requires some professionalism. It doesn't mean you don't get dirty. It doesn't mean you don't wear messy clothes sometimes because you're out doing something that's got to get done. It means that you know what you're talking about. You're consistent. You understand their side of the situation and are sympathetic to it instead of, the old, I was rewatching Ted Lasso. This is very funny because I want to watch the 3rd season. The very first episode, when he shows up and gets near the grass, the guy runs across, don't step on the grass, right in the beginning of it. And I think we need the other thing, which is My job is to get you on these fields, not to keep you off of them. My goal is to have you use them as much as you want and never restrict you is the goal, right, Ben? It's just not always easy.
Yep. Oh, exactly. That's exactly it. And it's taken a little cue from the golf superintendent world, right? Of being able to put on a collared shirt, clean off those pants and having a good conversation with someone. Sports turf managers don't have the best track record on some of that. And
That's right.
image, absolutely. Yeah, it's image. And we need to do a better job doing that. And like I said, that starts way before the season starts, with having those good relationships, right?
Ben, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Carl, another
Happy to help.
too fast 30 minutes. Too fast.
It goes by too fast. We're breaking the time-space continuum like Back to the Future. Thanks a ton, Ben, for joining us. We'll see you guys next week, Thursday and Friday, a golf show, and then we'll get some landscape folks there on Friday. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Ben. See you guys.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.